Hey there, welcome back to KG Law. I'm Kelly Riegel Green, the owner and founder of KG Law here in Sterling Heights, Michigan. Please understand that I work in the state of Michigan. Any advice that I give you is not because I'm your attorney. It's just some general good advice that I have found after practicing in the area for over 20 years now, and only applies to Michigan. I cannot speak for other states out of my jurisdiction where I am not licensed. So we've been discussing the 12 best interest factors because this is the one that I think lends the most questions in my office when I get a new client in, and we spend some time understanding that. Okay, so we've talked about, things like religion, we've talked about medical care, we've talked about mental health of the parents. So one of the other things that we look at, if a child is of school age, we look at the school records. So, are they always late on days when it's parent A's time? Are they, things like that? We also look at the child's home and the community record. So, again, tardiness. Is the child flunking out even though they're with parent A 90% of the time? That's going to be a problem. Who goes to school conferences? I encourage both my parents, make sure you are signed up for PTA or PTO, whichever one your school does. Make sure that you're signed up to receive the flyers in the newsletter. Make sure that you're checking on whatever app that your school uses. Make sure that you're signed up to receive those notifications. Those are important to follow up on. Who's going to school conferences and activities with the child? Do you show up for the Christmas concert? Do you show up for the, read for your, I don't know. My kids always had the month where like parents could come in on a certain day. You'd sign up and they come in and they read a little book and they do snack with the kid when they were little. So do you do those kinds of things? Do you do Secret Santa workshop with them or whatever it is? Who does that kind of stuff? Ideally, it's both parents. But, if not, who's doing it? Who makes sure that the child gets to go and hang out with their friends? Who's doing the play dates? Who's, are you taking the kids to McDonald's with their, are you picking up their buddy and going to McDonald's and playing the playscape? Which I always think are kind of gross. But, they're a great way for kids to run and expend energy. Who supervises the child's home responsibility? Does your child have chores? Pick up your laundry. Make sure they're age appropriate. I mean, the court's going to look down at it's a double-edged sword. Like if you're telling me that the child doesn't do their chores and I ask you what your chores are and you're telling me your 6-year-old is supposed to make dinner, do the dishes, and their own laundry, I'm going to look at you like what? That's not age appropriate. So yeah, no. But if you tell me that your 6-year-old is in charge of picking up their own toys and that you help them, I'm going to be like, okay. And that your 6-year-old gets to water the dog. Great. If those are yep. And all I do is remind them, great. But when they go to the other parent's home, they don't have any responsibilities, even at 6. Okay. Does your 13-year-old need chores? Sure. I mean, let's teach our children responsibility. So who's doing that? Who's doing that? That's the question there. And then who helps the child with homework? Now, I'm going to be the first to admit I have very smart children, and I love that. When I went through my own personal divorce, I laughed at this question because my daughter is super smart. And she always has been. She's read above grade level. She was reading chapter books in kindergarten. So, sometimes she would come home with homework, and I'm like, even with my JD, I didn't understand it. I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, can I phone a friend? And we always laugh. But then when my son is also very smart, thankfully. I have very wonderful kids, but oftentimes I would have to have my daughter help my son with his homework because I didn't understand it. It wasn't something like that I had dealt with in the most recent years. Like, I mean, I graduated high school in 1990. We didn't do Common Core math when I graduated. So, and realistically, so, when we came to my divorce, and I often ask my clients, who's helping with homework? Even if you don't understand it, do you sit there with your child as they're doing homework? Can they still, and you dial a friend for them? That's fine. You're still helping. Are you making sure it's at least done? That they've attempted it? Those kinds of things. Are you the parent who's running out and grabbing the poster boards that are needed? Those kinds of things. The other one, and this one is interesting because we just had some case law come down here in Michigan about this, and it's the reasonable preference of the child. If the judge considers the child to be old enough to express a preference. This one probably I get questions almost every divorce case with children involved. And it used to be, you'll hear, let me back up a second. You'll hear a lot of people say, well, my kid is 12. Why can't the judge ask them what they want? The kid will tell you that they want to live with me. First of all, I'm not sure that, it depends on the 12-year-old. But the judge is never going to ask your child, at least in 20 years of practice, I've never had a judge put a child on the actual stand and ask them, where do you want to live? And up until very recently, it was very rare that even an in-camera meeting would be held with a child. Now, if a child is 14, if a child is 16, especially a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old, that's a whole different story. But if you have younger children, I should say, it was hardly ever that a judge or a referee would have it in camera, which basically means that they go back into chambers. It's not on record. No attorneys are present. It's usually like either the judge or the referee, and then somebody from front of the court who's used to working with kids. And they know when a child, they can figure it out when a child's been prepped. Sometimes they'll send them over to the court psychologist to do this meeting. But again, it was pretty rare. Now, we've just had some case law come down in Michigan that says that if it is requested, or if the situation is where the parties cannot agree, then the court must interview a child. As an attorney, and as a mom, I have some feelings about that. And again, it's done without, we never, even the attorneys, we don't get told what a child says. We have no idea how much of the judge's decision comes from that conversation. So how much this factor is weight, we don't know. And that's for the protection of the child, because you don't want the child to then be told, well, you told the judge that you didn't want to live with me, so you must not love me. And we don't want that. So it's always done, if it's done, it's always done behind closed doors. So this new case is telling us that in most cases, if not all cases that involve a disputed child custody issue, the children must be interviewed. I don't know that that's the most effective way. I know that my cases in one county here, the judge absolutely does. She takes that very serious, and she interviews every single child if there's a child that is involved in the case that can articulate things more than I love mommy and I love daddy. So I always say, usually if they're younger than 7, it's not gonna happen. Most 6-year-olds can't articulate that. I think even 7 is sort of borderline, so you're gonna have that. But I have other judges who still, they'll send you to a court psychologist, but they're not going to interview children unless, again, it's a highly contested child custody case, and it's requested. So it'll be interesting to see in the coming months how that proceeds, and we'll go from there. But yeah, so there are changes that still happen in family law. We've had some case law actually over the last 5 or 6 years that have sort of changed some standards, and so that is why it is very important, if you have a custody or legal matter, that you consult with an attorney who understands and stays up on the law like we do here at KG Law. We'll see you next time.